Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. You know, it's pretty obvious if you listen to my program with any regularity, you'll know that I'm kind of fond of Scott Walker. I think he's a good candidate, solid candidate. Saw him recently here in Houston and was involved in a press conference there with him and really liked the way he handled the questions. And I, for one, like him a lot. He's getting harassed because he is a viable candidate. And, the more viable they are, the more ridiculous the harassment. And so they're going after him because of his lack of foreign policy expertise. And, like Barack Obama had volumes of it. I think Barack Obama's experience was limited to International House of Pancakes before he became president of the United States. But here we got something from Fox News I thought we'd share and kind of get their spin. And then we'll talk a little bit about it, Sigmund Kramer and myself, right after this.
Wisconsin Governor and potential presidential candidate Scott Walker. He's here to go on the record, and you're about to hear his response to the swipe from President Obama.
I am confident that any president who gets elected will be knowledgeable enough about foreign policy and knowledgeable enough about the traditions and precedents of presidential power that they won't start calling into question the capacity of the executive branch of the United States to enter into agreements with other countries. If that starts being questioned, that's going to be a problem for our friends, and that's going to embolden our enemies. And it would be a foolish approach to take. Perhaps Mr. Walker, after he's taken some time to bone up on foreign policy, will feel the same way.
And Governor Walker joins us. Good evening, sir. Why you? Why did you get the swipe? Was there maybe the question posed to him mentioned you? And secondly, what do you think about that he tells you should bone up on foreign policy?
Well, this isn't the first time. In the last couple of months, he's attacked me after signing Right to Work. He attacked us in the past for what we do to take power out of the big government special interest and put it in the hands of the taxpayers. He's now going after us here. But, I think he should spend more of his time trying to figure out ways to work with governors and members of Congress in both parties who have various serious concerns about the framework of this proposed deal with Iran. And I think it's remarkable that someone would suggest that when this is the same person, the President of the United States, who just in the past year called ISIS the JV squad, Yemen a success story, something he's not only called them, his administration continues to claim, and who had a Secretary of State under Hillary Clinton that actually gave Russia a reset button before much of the nonsense happened in the past several years. I mean, this is really surprising that someone would say something like this, but I expect we'll see more of this in the future.
In light of where we are with Iran, and I know that you have not announced you're running for president, but I'm sure you've seen the rumors, right? That you're going to run for president?
I've heard about it, yeah.
You've heard, okay. What would you do? What would you do about Iran?
Well, I think if there's a bad deal on the table, we should walk away from it. I hope the president will do that far beyond just the next presidential election. As Henry Kissinger and George Shultz pointed out the other day in the Wall Street Journal, there's some very serious concerns. It's not just people in the United States Senate in both parties. It's certainly Israel raising concerns, as Benjamin Netanyahu has raised as prime minister, but talking to many of our other allies in the Arab world, in the Gulf states in particular, there's real concern about why did we go into these negotiations in the first place? Why would we go down this path with a country that still continues to have connections to terrorist actions around the world, that has talked about pushing to enrich uranium, that won't completely disavow and disconnect themselves from having a nuclear weapon, and which has plenty of its own problems in terms of not only saying they want to completely take out Israel, but whose supreme leader, yet again, responding to people in that own country, talking about rash actions against the United States. I think there are some very serious concerns, and I hope that this deal doesn't go forward. I hope the president will walk away from it, but I think the next president should not be wed to that going forward, should have the capacity to pull back. Certainly, I think that would be in America's best interest.
Every governor who ever runs for president gets criticized for not having foreign policy experience, since that isn't part of the job of being governor. Except for, I mean, governors do trade missions. I know that you're going on a trade mission, or you're going to have a discussion in Germany soon. And so, but in terms of foreign policy having to do with ISIS and military things, how does a governor learn or develop foreign policy?
Well, you do spend time doing research. Part of it's just the passion of feeling deeply about this country, not just in terms of what your job responsibility is. I've been meeting for some time. Actually, one of my national security advisors is someone who was one of the top aides for Senator Corker, who now chairs the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, someone who's been in the Marine Corps, been deployed, understands national security policy very well, and then reaching out to folks, whether it's reaching out to General Keane, General Mathis, General Hayden, any number of other ambassadors, both the United States to other parts of the world, and even of late talking to ambassadors to the United States from other places. There are people who have an active interest, as well as over the years talking with George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, many others out there who have a wealth of knowledge and want to share that with people who want to reestablish America's place of leadership in the world again. Governors understand what it means to lead. It's why Ronald Reagan was such a great president, and why this president, unfortunately, a first-term senator who's never had the ability to lead prior to now, as I think has been a large failure when it comes to national security and foreign policy.
Governor, nice to see you, and I'm sure you're mourning like I am the basketball game the other night.
We are the Badgers, although we're ready for the Packers to bring the Lombardi Trophy back home again.
And the football, yes, thank you. Governor, thank you, sir.
All right, that was that. And I think Governor Walker made very, very cogent points. It makes a lot of sense to me. First of all, no one knows about foreign policy, even guys with a rich foreign policy history behind them until they get into that actual position. You don't really know what they're made of. But what I think is important is a temperament that shows you're not going to be easily moved, not going to be easily bent, especially when the national security is at risk. Scott Walker demonstrated that with his dealings with the unions. People blew out of proportion his analogy at CPAC, but I think it's certainly resonated with me. And honestly, I don't think Barack Obama has demonstrated any backbone at all. The guy has an entire record as president of inconsistencies, of punishing our friends and benefiting our enemies, of having almost what appeared to be little boy anger outbursts with drones to blow up people as he casually feels like he can or wants to. I think it's incredible that he would criticize anyone's foreign policy. It's the epitome of narcissism. What do you think, Sigmund?
Well, I think that it's very interesting that of all the people that Barack Obama would say to somebody that hey, my foreign policy, your foreign policy is hopefully going to be as good as mine someday.
Right.
Now, Joe Biden arguably has had a lot of foreign policy experience. Would you trust his judgment with foreign policy? Because
what part of no would you not understand?
Because most people who have any sort of historical perspective have said that Biden's been wrong pretty much on every foreign policy decision, and so we'll see how well that serves him if he decides to run. Scott Walker made a great point by saying, look, what's most important is that you have a concern for the country, an interest in returning the country to its place in the world where it's going to have influence, and it's going to be a positive influence in the world. And so that alone sets him apart from Obama.
Yeah, it does.
And by the way, I don't think President Obama quite understands the idea of keep your friends close and your enemies
He's got
closer.
it completely backwards, doesn't he?
Keeps your friends close and your enemies closer. But I think he thinks it means you should treat your enemies better. And that's not true. And unfortunately, that's what's been happening as part of his foreign policy. And it continues to, and he's an embarrassment. And Scott Walker, I can't imagine, would be any worse. How about that?
Well, this, I will have to say, is an understatement. I agree with you on that. All right, that's what we got. And when we come back, much more for you. You can obviously hear both of these not only at priceofbusiness.com, but it'll be posted at usadailyReview.com. More after this right here on The Price of Business.